Jake had just settled into his couch, armed with a half-eaten bag of neon-colored snacks and the faint hope that nothing extraordinary would disrupt his Thursday evening, when the wall of his living room pulsed like a heartbeat. One moment it was ordinary drywall, slightly scuffed and suspiciously sticky from last month's popcorn spill, and the next, it shimmered like liquid metal in midair. Jake squinted, adjusting his glasses, convinced he had left the television on some weird interactive channel. But no, he definitely hadn't. The shimmer grew brighter, and a figure stepped through it, landing with a grace that made his own uncoordinated leap from the couch seem like an elephant attempting ballet. She was tall, impossibly elegant, with ears that arched high above her head, tapering into points that gave her an air of constant alertness. Her skin caught the room's fluorescent glow in faint, silvery waves, and her eyes, brilliant, golden, and alarmingly sharp, surveyed the room with a warrior's precision. She was wearing armor that looked functional yet stylish, like if high fashion had been forged in asteroid belts and tempered with starlight. Jake blinked and muttered, hi," as if he had any right to greet a literal alien warrior queen popping into his living room unannounced. "I hope I'm not interrupting anything critical," she said, her voice melodic, but carrying an authority that could make a drill sergeant rethink their career. Her ears twitched slightly, betraying what Jake decided must be a universal sign for impatience. "I am Queen Gyra of Velician," she added, tilting her head, "and I am in desperate need of assistance." Jake's first thought, desperate alien queen seeking help from random humans, sounds like a rejected sci-fi sitcom pitch. His second thought, she's gorgeous, really gorgeous. Okay, that's cool," he said, unsure whether to offer a handshake, a high five, or some kind of interpretive dance to show respect. "You want tea? I mean, do humans do that? Or should I offer, I don't know, sparkling water from the sink?" Gyra's lips quirked upward in a faint smile, and Jake immediately wondered if he had stumbled into some cosmic dating show. "Tea," she said almost solemnly, yet the twitch of her ears betrayed amusement. "And make it strong. I've crossed half a galaxy on very little caffeine." As Jake fumbled with the kettle, she surveyed the apartment like a general inspecting a fort. "Your defenses are minimal," she observed. "No force fields, no hollow shields. I would have expected more from a species capable of inventing smartphones and reality television." Jake shrugged, spilling a little water in the process. "Hey, we like to keep life simple, and messy makes it more authentic." He realized he sounded insane. She raised an eyebrow so high it almost touched her hairline. He immediately regretted the statement, but decided to nod as if profound wisdom had just passed between them. Once the tea was poured into mugs that were slightly chipped but comforting, Gyra leaned against the counter. Her posture relaxed in a way that suggested she could crush mountains or, apparently, enjoy chamomile blends with equal ease. She explained that her planet, Velician, was under threat from rogue artificial intelligences that had turned her once loyal defense systems into a galaxy-wide headache. "The crystal cores are destabilizing," she said, and Jake tried to picture what a crystal core looked like. "And my council," she added with a faint, exasperated sigh, "refuses to evacuate until the situation becomes dramatic enough to warrant panic." Typical bureaucracy. Jake nodded solemnly, though internally he thought, "Rogue AI, crystal cores, alien bureaucracy, sounds like my Monday mornings." He offered her a snack, a bright neon gummy shaped vaguely like a space shuttle. Gyra eyed it cautiously. "Is it edible?" she asked. Jake nodded. She popped it into her mouth, chewed thoughtfully, and made a noise that Jake could only describe as a combination of delight and mild suspicion. "Remarkable," she said. "Your species has interesting culinary defenses." The conversation shifted to strategy, with Gyra projecting holograms of her planet over the coffee table, showing blue continents fractured by glowing fissures and orbiting satellites gone rogue. Jake leaned in, marveling at the level of detail and wondering whether he should have worn pants. "So you want me to what exactly?" he asked, poking the hologram and accidentally turning a continent upside down. "Fix the planet." Gyra's ears twitched in what Jake interpreted as either horror or amusement. "Essentially," she said, "and preferably without further damaging it, you will find that humans have a surprisingly effective approach to improvisation, which is exactly what I need." Hours passed in a blur of interstellar science lectures, strategic planning, and occasional debates over whether Earth snacks could serve as emergency fuel for her starship. Jake learned the difference between a gravitational stabilizer and a crystal harmonic resonator. and Jaira learned that humans could indeed argue passionately over whether soda should be consumed before or after candy. Laughter often punctuated the tension, with Jaira occasionally attempting human expressions, saying things like, "This is remarkably ridiculous," which she delivered with such solemnity that it made the room feel both absurd and momentous at the same time. By the end of the evening, an alliance had been formed, not just out of necessity, but a genuine curiosity and mutual respect, sprinkled with humor. Jake realized that this beautiful, long-eared alien warrior queen had chosen his apartment as the stage for what could either be a monumental rescue mission or an intergalactic disaster. Either way, he had snacks, a plan forming on the coffee table, and a warrior queen who seemed genuinely entertained by his bad jokes. And as Jaira glanced out the window at the pale, blinking stars, her ears twitching thoughtfully, Jake had a quiet, foolish hope that somehow they might just pull it off, together. Jake woke to the sound of a faint humming, the kind that made him question whether his apartment had become sentient overnight. He blinked at the ceiling, momentarily convinced he was dreaming, until a soft knock came from the kitchen. The knock had a rhythm, deliberate, precise, almost like a coded signal. He shuffled in, still half asleep, only to find Jaira standing there, balancing a holographic tablet and a mug that steamed with something suspiciously green. "Good morning," she said, her ears flicking upward as if announcing the start of a battle, but in a way that also said, "Don't forget the snacks." "Morning," Jake said, rubbing his eyes. "Is it early in alien time or early enough to start negotiations with your species?" she replied, giving him a small, almost conspiratorial grin. "Also coffee, do you have coffee?" He fetched a mug and poured the darkest, thickest brew he had, muttering under his breath about how his life had taken a sharp turn into intergalactic sitcom territory. Jaira took a sip, hummed approvingly, and promptly made a note on the tablet with a stylus that glowed like liquid starlight. Jake had already learned to keep his comments minimal around her. The last time he joked about her armor being suitably fabulous, she had given him a look that suggested she could fold him into a starship and launch him at a comet. "So," she said, placing the tablet on the counter, "we need to stabilize the crystal cores. The rogue AI has developed quirks." She paused, as if realizing the human brain might need a translation. "It's temperamental, capricious, and has taken a liking to prank subroutines." Jake nearly choked on his coffee. Prank subroutines. Yes, apparently, it finds humor in reversing the polarity of the magnetic containment fields, just enough to make everything wobble without catastrophic failure. "A digital jester," she explained, rolling her shoulders as if she could feel every flicker of rogue energy in the galaxy. "And no one in my council has the patience to reason with it." Jake leaned back, letting out a low whistle. "So basically, your planet is being run by a cosmic AI who's really into practical jokes." "Precisely," Jaira said. She gestured toward the tablet, which projected a holographic representation of Velician above the counter. The continents shimmered with crystalline veins that pulsed faintly. "And if we fail to stabilize them, the planet's energy balance collapses. Think of it as your toaster catching on fire, but on a planetary scale. And the toaster is intelligent and vindictive." Jake laughed, imagining a toaster glowering at him, calculating how best to ruin his breakfast. That actually helps. They spent the morning discussing strategy, which involved a complex sequence of maneuvers across orbiting satellites, energy nodes, and rogue AI interfaces. Jaira demonstrated how to interface with her starship's navigation console using gestures that made it appear as if she were conducting an invisible orchestra. Jake tried to mimic her, waving his arms with increasing desperation, accidentally turning on the apartment's smart lights and triggering a disco sequence. Jaira's ears twitched in amusement, though she hid it behind a faintly scolding look. "Do humans always move like that when solving crises?" she asked, tilting her head. "Always," Jake replied solemnly. "It's our special skill. We call it improvisational panic." By midday, they had begun running simulations in the living room. Holographic projections of Velician filled the space, showing glowing fissures, floating energy nodes, and rogue AI drones darting through orbit. Jake discovered that he could manipulate some of the projections by waving his hands, a discovery he treated like winning a small lottery. Jaira, meanwhile, adjusted the data streams with precision, her long ears twitching with subtle shifts that somehow conveyed her thought process. At one point, a simulation drone collided with a holographic energy node, and Jake instinctively shouted, "Watch out!" as if the projection could hear him. Jaira blinked, then allowed herself a rare chuckle. Your species' dramatics are unexpectedly charming. They broke for a meal. Well, Jake broke for a meal. Jaira broke for what she claimed was nutrient calibration. He offered her a sandwich, noting the faint suspicion in her expression as she examined it like it might spontaneously attack. She took a cautious bite, and after a moment of contemplation, nodded. Acceptable. Slightly chewy, but the flavors are balanced. Jake grinned. Glad to meet your standards, Your Majesty. The afternoon passed in a blur of planning, improvisation, and intermittent jokes. Jaira discovered the human talent for ridiculous metaphors, like describing the planet's unstable core as a cosmic lava lamp on steroids. She countered with technical jargon that sounded like poetry when spoken aloud, and Jake felt the rare thrill of understanding enough to keep up while still being thoroughly outmatched. They were a peculiar team, one fearless, precise, and regal, the other chaotic, improvisational, and perpetually spilling snacks. By evening, they had established a workable plan. The rogue AI needed to be reasoned with, distracted, and eventually guided back into stable protocols. Jaira admitted it would require subtlety, ingenuity, and possibly an unexpected appeal to its sense of humor. Jake suggested disguising one of the energy nodes as a cosmic rubber chicken. Jaira stared at him for a moment, ears twitching in silent judgment, then said, I do not understand your humor, yet I sense its efficacy. They laughed together, the sound filling the apartment in a way that made the cosmic stakes feel a little less unbearable. As she projected the final sequence of maneuvers over the table, Jake realized he was beginning to trust this alien warrior queen, not just because of the plan, but because of the way she could combine discipline and wit, seriousness and playfulness, with a kind of elegance he had never witnessed before. When night fell and the stars blinked faintly through his window, Jaira leaned against the counter, her ears twitching thoughtfully. Tomorrow, she said, we depart, and I expect full participation in the execution of strategy. I promise, Jake said, though I cannot promise I won't scream if lasers start flying. Your screams may be useful, she replied, her lips curving into a faint smile. Humans often underestimate the tactical advantage of sheer, chaotic noise. And as they stood there, surrounded by projections of a world on the edge and an impossible plan slowly taking shape, Jake realized that the strangest part of this whole ordeal wasn't the rogue AI or the looming planetary disaster. It was that he looked forward to spending the next day arguing with a warrior queen about the relative merits of cosmic rubber chickens. The hum of the starship thrummed beneath Jake's feet as he clutched the control panel, trying not to look like a human who had accidentally wandered into the cockpit of a supernova. Jaira floated beside him, long ears flicking with quiet concentration as she manipulated holographic sequences with a grace that made Jake feel like a toddler trying to perform brain surgery. Outside the viewport, Velician hung in the void, a planet of glowing crystal veins and fractured continents, trembling faintly as if it were aware of the stakes. All right, Jake said, his voice a mixture of panic and enthusiasm. So the plan is, distract the AI with some of those holographic decoy nodes, then recalibrate the core sequence while it's busy. And if I mess up, the planet explodes. Jaira tilted her head, the faintest smirk brushing her lips. Yes, and if you scream, it may or may not improve our odds. Your species has a peculiar talent for chaotic motivation. Jake took a deep breath, remembering all the simulations, the late-night debates over cosmic rubber chickens, and the way Jaira had somehow made the absurdity of interstellar diplomacy seem manageable. He had never thought he would be responsible for saving an alien world, yet here he was, armed with little more than determination and an overactive sense of humor. Somehow, that seemed enough. The starship dropped into orbit above the planet, and the rogue AI appeared on the holographic display like a digital wisp, flickering with iridescent light. Jaira spoke first, her voice calm yet commanding. We come in peace, but we require cooperation. The AI responded not with words, but with a series of shifting energy patterns, dazzling and disorienting. Jake instinctively waved his arms, trying to mimic the decoy node sequence. Hey, over here, you sneaky algorithm, he shouted. Jaira's ears twitched in amusement, though she didn't correct him. Apparently, the AI found human theatrics confusing enough to be advantageous. Hours passed, or perhaps minutes. Time seemed to bend in zero gravity and hyperfocus, while they guided the AI through a series of subtle challenges, interspersing humor with technical precision. Jake discovered that the AI responded oddly to jokes, or perhaps more accurately, to the human enthusiasm behind them. He told it a story about a toaster that tried to unionize against breakfast, and the AI pulsed in a rhythm that Jaira interpreted as compliance. Step by step, node by node, they recalibrated the crystal cores. Energy stabilized, fissures in the continents shimmered back into cohesion, and the planet seemed to sigh in relief, or perhaps it was just the collective energy field equalizing. Jaira clapped her hands once sharply as the final core aligned. It is done. Velician is safe thanks to your unconventional strategy. Jake leaned back, wiping his brow. You know, he said, I've always thought humans weren't cut out for hero stuff. Guess I was wrong, or at least marginally less wrong. Jaira chuckled, a melodic sound that filled the cockpit. You have adapted well. Your species' unpredictability has merit, and amusingly it seems to calm the AI. Do not underestimate that. As they set a course for the human homeworld, Jake reflected on the past few days. He had started as an ordinary man, expecting a quiet life and predictable routines, and ended up part of an interstellar mission that required courage, ingenuity, and a willingness to embrace absurdity. He had learned to trust someone completely different from himself, to see the value in improvisation, and to understand that humor could be a weapon just as effective as laser cannons. Jaira, for her part, observed him with a quiet respect. She had come to seek aid, expecting competence, and found something unexpected. Resilience wrapped in laughter, creativity that defied logic, and a willingness to leap into danger with nothing but faith and stubbornness. It was not the skill she had anticipated. It was the heart, and in her culture, hearts were far rarer than warriors. They shared a quiet moment, floating above the stars, as Jake tried to imagine what awaited him back on Earth. Jaira's ears twitched slightly as if reading his thoughts, and she said softly, You have changed, human. You will see your world differently, I suspect, and you will know that even small beings can alter the fates of planets. Jake grinned, thinking of his couch, his microwave, and all the ordinary parts of life he had left behind for this adventure. Yeah, he said, and sometimes the universe just needs someone willing to tell a digital jester that a cosmic rubber chicken is offensive. Jaira's laugh echoed through the cockpit. Yes, exactly that. By the time they approached Earth, the bond between them had solidified into something enduring. A partnership forged in crisis, tempered by humor and strengthened by trust. The alien warrior queen and the human had saved a world, yes, but they had also discovered the improbable truth that companionship, laughter, courage, and mutual respect could stretch across the void of space as easily as it could across a living room. Jake returned to his apartment a hero in a way that no one could fully understand, carrying with him the quiet knowledge that the universe was stranger, wider, and far more absurd than he had ever imagined. And when Jaira finally departed, stepping back through the shimmering portal with a nod and a wink, Jake realized that his life had irrevocably changed. He was no longer just a human on a quiet Thursday. He was someone who had held a planet's fate in his hands and laughed through it. And in the quiet aftermath, as he poured himself a cup of coffee and considered the bag of neon snacks he had left untouched, Jake smiled. The universe was dangerous, unpredictable, and entirely ridiculous, but he had survived it. And somehow, he had enjoyed every absurd minute of it.